Writing is incredibly boring. Hey, I'm Cam with Canvas Collective. I'm a writer here, not usually in front of the camera, but I am here to talk to you today about writing your first script. If you're coming here to write a script because writing a book seemed too intense, that may not be the case. There's a lot of details that you get to have control over as a book writer compared to a screenwriter. With the screenwriting, once you finish that final draft, you have to go and hand it off to someone. Like the way that the characters act, that's up to the actor. The way that the set design looks, that's up to the director. The way that the costumes look, those are all up to the costume designer. So once you hand in that final draft, you have to let it go and let it take on a life of its own and kind of take a back seat. And you still have to keep a lot of those details in mind while you're writing the script, but not so much that it allows it to kind of take over control of the entire thing. That's not your job. Your job is just to get the ideas out there and make sure that they're clear enough to inspire someone else to do their job. So in this first video, I'm just gonna go over some of the questions that I had when I first started writing and help you kind of walk through. Maybe you have some of the same issues that I did, so I'll help you walk through those. There's no one answer to where ideas come from. They just kind of come from wherever, really. It can be a plot point that you see in a TV show that you really liked. It could be a moment that you shared with somebody on the train that you want to expand on. It could be a stranger that you see on the bus. You ask yourself, what is their life like? It comes from everywhere, but at the heart of it, it comes from you and the way that you look at the world. When you start writing, there's two things that you really want to look into, and that's your characters and your setting. Your characters, you really need to understand the characters that you're putting into your project. What their motivation is, how their motivation develops over time, how their goals change as they continue on throughout their story. In Star Wars, we have Luke Skywalker, whose motivation at the beginning of the movie is just to get off Tatooine. He just wants to escape his family and his homestead, and he wants to go off and fight the Empire. And then very quickly he meets R2-D2 and C-3PO, who help him kind of get through that hump and get past that first goal and move on with the story. And then it transitions to, how do you beat the Empire? And in that idea, we have the last bit, which is, do they meet their goals and do they complete them? Now, in the case of Star Wars, he does, but in some instances, they don't always complete their goal. There's a goal that is set and clear to the audience that it hasn't been hit, that hasn't been met. With setting, what you want to look for is the location, the time and place. It could be the 70s, it could be the Revolutionary period, it could be any time after in the future or anything like that. These are all questions that you need to have answers to before you go into it. Just saying that your story could be set in 1970 or 2002 or 2020, that's not an answer. You need a set period of time. You need a set date. There is a theme that goes with the story that is entirely set based off of the time that you give the script. And you want to look for the duration. Is this a story that takes place over 24 hours? Is this a story that takes place over a couple hours? Is this a story that takes place over many years? What is the consequences of this story taking place over days rather than just a handful of hours? What gets to play out over those years that progress your story forward if it does take years? Or is this all something that can happen in just the span of a few hours? Would it be too convenient if it happens in just a few hours? All of these questions help formulate that idea in your mind of what the overall plot looks like. You want to look at location during the process as well. And that's where is that position? It could be in a field in France like Waterloo, where you have these large sweeping battles, or it could be on a distant planet like Mars, in The Martian, where you have just one person alone by himself in a very contained space and confinement. How does that affect your character? How does that affect the plot going forward? If somebody is on Mars, they're probably not communicating with a lot of people. And if they are, there's some delay in receiving that information and receiving those communications. With Waterloo, everything is right in front of you. With large sweeping battles, everything is quick-paced and fast and coming at you. With The Martian, it's very slow-paced and it's very confined in one space. Writing is incredibly boring. There are times when I sit down to start writing, and I get up a minute later and walk around and make a sandwich, watch a YouTube video, or in times of severe desperation, I start cleaning. The way that I like to get back into it is by focusing on a particular plot point in the story, like the scene that sparked the idea for me, then expanding from there. If that doesn't work for you, there's a question that you have to ask. Are you a gardener or are you an architect? A gardener is somebody who, is walking along the path and sees where it's going as they're going. An architect is somebody who needs to start at point A and know what point B is and all the steps along the way before they go on the journey. And as I close out my first video, I'll leave you with a quote from Neil Gaiman. He said, "On your first draft, write everything down that happens in your story. And then on the second draft, make it look like you knew what you were doing all along."